All right. Good morning, everyone. Hello. Happy Mother's Day to all. Good to be with you. Good to be with those joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Happy you're in the space as well. Since it's Mother's Day, we are going to devote this service to all things female and feminine. And we're going to do it, I hope, in a creative and enlightening way. We're going to be looking at some of the teachings of Anandamaya Ma. We're going to be looking at the teachings of Mira Alfasa, also known as the Mother, and her co-conspirator in the work of Integral Yoga, Sri Aurobindo. So I hope you're going to enjoy this. Again, I hope it really feeds your heart and it brings an appreciation not only to the Divine Mother or for the Divine Mother, but mothers in general, who, and according to these teachings, are embodiments of the Divine Mother. And, you know, we got to keep this in mind, too, as we broach this subject, as the Dalai Lama had figured out years ago, because one of his core teachings is Shantideva, is the way of the Bodhisattva. And these teachings on compassion are often begun through these preliminary practices of seeing all beings as your mother. And so even cockroaches and mosquitoes, because of this endless transmigration that the Buddhists believe in, were at one point your mother and gave their life's blood for you, to care for you, out of abundant and unconditional loving kindness. And so everything should be treated with respect and honor, even the most minuscule and seemingly insignificant beings. But when the Dalai Lama brought these teachings into the West, he saw that a lot of Westerners were bristling over this teaching about seeing all beings as your mother, because unlike the general tone of Tibetan culture, we in the West seem to have more upsets and difficulties with our mothers. And so we want to take this into consideration, because as we process these teachings this morning, we do so through the lens of our own conditioning. And so I would ask that you become more centered within your witnessing state, so that even if you're feeling some of these old patterns, these residues of mother energy that are not really in resonance with where we're going, that you would recognize that. And also, oftentimes, as I've discovered over the years, that sometimes when we have a certain version of our mother that we're sticking with, and it might be around certain grievances and upsets, we often miss the beauty, the kindness, the care that even within sometimes an imperfect person was still there to show up for us, like just to give us birth. That alone is quite a feat. So all of that to say that we want to honor and celebrate all mothers everywhere today. And also on this note of sort of cultural conditioning, one of the things that we also want to point out as we're going into this teaching this morning is in our culture, a lot now, more often than ever, we're hearing more or less this shout down with the patriarchy, like this idea that for thousands of years we've been suffering under toxic masculinity, and that these ruling elites and these people that are, in charge of culture, academia, etc., have been more or less men, and they have been enforcing their influence and, in the process, subjugating the female and holding the female back from equal rights, etc. And so what has happened in the past 50 years or so is there's been a huge swing with first, second, third wave feminism that has more or less come to this almost militant refusal of the patriarchy. And as a result, there's been a lot of pushback, and we see this within a lot of the tones and qualities of the woke culture and how that's influencing our movies, where you have a lot of feminine energy expressing itself very masculinely. Warrior women swinging swords and kicking dudes' butts, That's all part of trying to find this balance and empower the female, but in a way that perhaps is a little overly emphasizing what in many ways is what's being rejected out of that patriarchal culture. So we're going to see how these themes play out today, especially when we get into Sri Aurobindo's poetry, where he looks at the three different expressions of the Divine Mother. The Mother of Sorrows is the first one that we come across in his great poem. The Mother of Might is the second, and this is Durga, this is the warrior goddess, Artemis, Diana, that great archetype of the female warrior. And then the Mother of Light and Joy at the very apex of consciousness. And we're going to see how all of these are integral in understanding the feminine archetype and the power of the female, but I think all within the alignment or attunement with the heart of divinity, not as a reactionary force, but as a embodiment of our true nature, okay? So having said that, why don't we just settle the mind for a moment, get into the space of conscious breathing. And know that each one of us is a combination of forces. We are both masculine and feminine energies in this blend of passive and active forces. And so as we come to this moment of just relaxing and opening and allowing the breath to deepen and flow, we are embodying more of the right brain hemisphere, the more feminine, the moon channel in yoga. And we become more passive, more porous. Silent. So one of the great teachers, some would even say the avatar of the Divine Mother, that we have encountered in recent memory is Ramakrishna. He lived in India in the late 19th century, and his focus was on the Mother Goddess in the form of Kali. And if you have never read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, even, it's massive. There's an abridged version. There's also a great compendium of his teachings given by Lex Hickson in the book entitled The Great Swan. So if you've never read anything about Ramakrishna, I highly recommend it. It's just brimming with wonderful teachings, beauty, and it's hard to hold back the tears at some point, just the tenderness and the realism that he's expressing in his realization. But he's also very adept in telling stories. And one of the stories that he tells is of these three robbers that set upon this man. And they beat him up really badly and rob him, take all of his belongings. And then one robber says, "We should murder this guy so that he doesn't say anything." And the second robber says, no, we don't have to murder him. Let's just tie him up and we'll get away. He won't be able to call the police in time and we'll be scot-free. So that's what they do. They tie the guy up and get out of there. After they leave, a few minutes later, the other third robber comes and unties the man and says, I'm not going to hurt you, but I just want to let you know that this is the way that you have to go to get back to your village. And he shows the man, who was very severely wounded. So he helps him along, and he gets him on the road, and he goes, down that way, keep going, will be your village. And the man's like, please, 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 thank you so much for your kindness. Let me take you back to the village, because the people in my village will be very, thankful that you've paid me this kindness. And the man's like, no, I can't go, because if I go, they'll find out what I did to you and they'll kill me. So he gets out of there, and the man goes to the village. And Ramakrishna uses this story as a way of expressing the qualities of nature that we are going through towards our enlightenment. And if you don't know anything about the Hindu teachings, and I should say this as a quick footnote, the word Hindu is a Western construction. It was given by Alexander the Great when he went over to India. Hindus don't refer to themselves as Hindus. And so it was because of the Indus River that the Greeks called them Hindus. Their religion is Sanatana Dharma, which means the eternal natural way. So a Hindu refers to himself as a follower of the eternal natural way, the Sanatana Dharma. And so in the teachings of the Sanatana Dharma, they are very impressive in the way that they've been able to understand the inner workings of the psyche and nature. It's astonishing. And that, all, as we know, all gets influenced into Buddhism. Master psychologists and scientists of the mind and nature. And the way that they've looked at mind and nature, not seeing them really as two, is that nature and mind have three qualities, fundamentally. One is this dark, heavy quality. In Sanskrit, it's called tamas. The next up in that spectrum of energy within nature, within mind, within everything, is rajas. It's this active, passionate principle. And then finally, this more luminous, transparent quality of sattva, right? It's based within a more light field. And so the dark, the active and transformative, and the light, or the transparent. And what Ramakrishna says is those are the three robbers. The three robbers, the first one that wants to kill him is tamas. Tamas is just dark, malicious, malevolent energy, oftentimes, and only thinking for himself. And so the second that just wants to tie him up and not kill him is rajas, passion. And so Ramakrishna says that's the worldly desires and sense indulgences that will keep a person bound and tied to the world of sense and form. And the one who unties the poor hapless fellow is sattva, this enlightening principle. And as we progress on our spiritual path, we will go through these spectrums of consciousness. We will go through or from the heavy. We will transform that through the rajasic, or the passionate nature, the eros, as Plato and Plotinus like to look at it, this erotic ascent that even gets put into the Greek Christian tradition. And then you have this sattvic tradition. And as Ramakrishna says, this light or luminous principle within nature takes us onto the path of enlightenment, shows us the way, but it can't go with us. We have to actually leave all of it behind, all of nature behind. We actually extricate ourselves from everything that is nature, even the luminous and the joyful and the bright. There's something beyond all phenomena, all tangibility, all thought, all word. And so Ramakrishna is saying that this is our journey out of the limited embodiment. And so we have then this task of looking at the Great Mother through this lens. And while we do, I'd like to share the teachings of Mira Alfassa, or the Mother. And what's interesting as we get into the prayer is that the mother is, let's say it this way, in our Judeo-Christian tradition, we have the Jewish temple, and the Jewish temple went through two different phases. It's referred to as the first and the second temple periods. And the first temple period, there's clear evidence within the Bible that the earliest strata of Judaism or Hebrew worship centered upon a goddess. And we've talked about this once before, I think. And this Hebrew goddess, or Asherah, was the consort of Yahweh and actually had her image in the first temple. And she was the queen of heaven. And she was the captain or queen of the angels, just like we get with Mother Mary, which is actually a throwback to First Temple Judaism. A lot of Catholic Christianity picked up that early Temple Judaism and brought it into a new expression. My point here is that the mother is the veil. And when you go beyond the veil as the priest or the initiate, you have to take off the purple, the scarlet, and the gold. And all you have are the white garments as the priest to go into the Holy of Holies. This is exactly the tamas, rajas, and sattva elements you have to take off. And you go beyond the curtain of the manifest cosmos into the unmanifest, into the Holy of Holies. And so tearing the veil is a symbol of going into this innermost place that is beyond even the luminous qualities of nature. And so this is the mother's prayer here, written down on April 10th, 1914. Suddenly the veil was rent. The horizon was disclosed, and before the clear vision, my whole being threw itself at thy feet in a great outburst of gratitude. Yet in spite of this deep and integral joy, all was calm. All was peaceful with the peace of eternity. I seemed to have no more limits. There is no longer the perception of the body, no sensations, no feelings, no thoughts. A clear, pure, tranquil immensity penetrated with love and light, filled with an unspeakable beatitude is all that is there, and that alone seems now to be myself. And this myself is so little the former I, selfish and limited, that I cannot tell if it is I or thou, O Lord, sublime master of destinies. It is as though all were energy, courage, force, will, infinite sweetness, incomparable compassion. Even more forcibly than during these last days, the past is dead, and as though buried under the rays of a new life. The last glance that I have just thrown backward as I read a few pages of this book definitely convinced me of this death and lightened of a great weight. I present myself before thee, O my divine master, with all the simplicity, all the nudity of a child, and still the one only thing I perceive is that calm and pure immensity. Lord, thou hast answered my prayer. Thou hast granted me what I have asked from thee. The I has disappeared. There is only a docile instrument put at thy service, a center of concentration and manifestation of thy infinite and eternal rays. Thou hast taken my life and made it thine. Thou hast taken my will and hast united it to thine. Thou hast taken my love and identified it with thine. Thou hast taken my thought and replaced it by thy absolute consciousness. The body, marveling, bows its forehead in the dust in mute and submissive adoration. And nothing else exists but thou alone in the splendor of thy immutable peace. So this is, I would submit, the empowerment of the feminine. This is the type of empowerment that these higher teachings are bringing all of us to. And as Mira Alfassa expressed in her experience just now, this is all that she lived for, and now God can work through her in a powerful and mighty way. The body had disappeared, and all became divinized within her. Clear, powerful, strong, sweet, compassionate. That is the empowerment, right? And so just as a quick aside, this blissful mother that we just got from the Mother Mira's entry or prayer is literally the name of Sri Anandamaya Ma, the blissful mother. And she was considered, again, a great master, an incarnation, and lived in India up until, I think, the 1970s, very recent. And among many things, her teachings were liberating women, especially within the caste structure of Hindu society, where patriarchy is very strong. And a lot of the religions are very strict in terms of what we see also in our fundamentalist Christianity. I don't allow a woman to teach. Women should be silent in church. That kind of flavoring is definitely within the Vedic caste society. And so Anandamaya Ma went into a revolution on that front. And so it says here, her attitude towards the role of women is both traditional and modern. She does emphasize woman's duty to be loyal and obedient to her husband. At the same time, she envisages a revolutionary change in the status of women. It marks the spirit of the present time, that women will take their place at the helm of society and men ply the oars. The spiritual training of women must not in any way be inferior to that of men. Then you will see how the lives of both men and women will be ennobled and raised to a higher level. A renaissance of society would follow. And then it goes on to say how, in particular, she went up against some of these really stern rules within the religious culture of her day, like the wearing of the Brahmanical thread that is only for men. She actually would initiate her disciples and give them the thread, a real affront, major affront to the collective belief of her culture. And then she also pushed for her mother her biological mother, after her father had passed away. Her mother wanted to become a Swami. And so through her influence, she actually had her mother come to a place where she can then go through the training and receive the title of Swami, which is, again, something that you don't normally, or hadn't up until then, normally seen within the strict sexism of that religious belief system. But all of that to say, in this revolutionary approach to liberating women, even to the point where she says women will have their hands on the tiller and men will ply the oars. Like women, and I don't want to sound like I'm a beta male or something up here, but the idea is that women have a gift and a quality and a wisdom that is so complementary and important to the flourishing of society. So, for instance, even Sri Aurobindo, before the Mother Mira came to his ashram, was working very diligently at his spiritual practice, but was stalled or stopped. And it wasn't until the mother came with her insights and her influence that his spiritual practice began to really accelerate and move in a good direction. And I can speak personally too, and I don't want to make her embarrassed here, but my partner Lisa has done that for me. That I felt stalled and stuck and kind of lost in my own intellectualizing and confusion. And through our relationship have been able to really find this deeper place within myself that she pointed to, sometimes exhaustively because of my inner resistance to being guided by a woman. No girl's going to tell me what to do. So I had to get over that. It's kind of a residue of, the cowboy, the macho man, the Italian guy. But nevertheless, she stuck with me, and now I'm so perfectly enlightened. So let that be a lesson to all of you. Just don't look at my woman. She's my property. I own that. Anyway, I digress. But here's the idea that even with all of this revolution and empowerment for the female, Ananda Maya Ma says something very important. And this is back to what we saw with Mother Mira's prayer and true empowerment. She says, it's being summarized, her teaching around this. It is necessary not to misconstrue Ananda Maya Ma's innovative gestures. In no way can they be seen as women's liberationist moves in the Western sense. The emphasis is on spiritual equality. Above all, the goal is liberation from sense enslavement and egocentricity. This is contrary to the contemporary Western movement, which chiefly claims the right for women to indulge in sense and pursue egotistic goals on par with men. So in other words, it's not really down with patriarchy. It's down with patriarchy that excludes women being patriarchal also. That's basically what is being critiqued here. That it's got to go, just like those robbers have to take you beyond nature, right? We need a liberationist movement for women that take them beyond this worldly belief system of sense indulgence and egocentricity, because that is just a different form of enslavement and limitation. It was one of the laments of Carl Jung, who I think was kind of a toxic male, but anyway, very brilliant one. And one of the things that he had said was that academe, women were starting to be led into higher learning. And his concern was they were just going to become masculine in spirit. As they went through this training, they would lose their connection to their real feminine gift, which is this goddess energy, this power that is uniquely female. Now, I don't want to, typecast what a female is by any stretch of the matter, but I think what we do point out here is that empowerment must go beyond cultural mores and body identity. Enough said. Keep in mind, we're going to have a Q&A at the end, so come up with your thoughts and your questions, or your rotten tomatoes. A little more from Mother Mira. So remember, this first experience of going beyond the veil had her disappear as a body ego, and her energy and God's energy merged. So much so, she didn't know where she stopped and God started, and God stopped and she started. There was a oneness that was so sweet and beautiful, and it just filled every atom of her being, right? She became the vast. But there's another stage to this now that we're going to see, and it's here. I was interrupted yesterday when I was trying to formulate the experience I had, and now everything seems changed. That precise knowledge, that clear-sightedness has given place to a great love for thee, O Lord, which has seized my whole being, from the outer organism to the deepest consciousness, and all lies prostrate at thy feet in an ardent aspiration for a definitive identification with thee, an absorption in thee. I implored thee with all the energy I could summon, and once again, just when it seemed to me that my consciousness was going to disappear in thine, just when all my being was nothing but a pure crystal reflecting thy presence, someone came and interrupted my concentration. Such is indeed the symbol of the existence thou givest me as my share, in which outer usefulness, the work for all, holds a much greater place even than the supreme realization. All the circumstances of my life seem always to tell me on thy behalf, it is not through supreme concentration that thou wilt realize oneness. It is by spreading out in all. May thy will be done, O Lord. Now I understand clearly that union with thee is not an aim to be pursued so far as this present individuality is concerned. It is an accomplished fact since a long time, this union. It's already a fact. And that is why thou seemest to tell me always, do not delight in the ecstatic contemplation of this union. Accomplish the mission I have entrusted to thee upon earth. Spread out in all. And this is back to Shantideva. This is also the idea, really the core of A Course in Miracles teaching, that miracles are interpersonal, maximal exchanges of love, where one embodies the Holy Spirit so completely that they just see the Holy Spirit in all. And it's in that vision that everyone else can come to realize who they are, and we buoy up in this understanding. So the work is surrender, disappear in God, and then get to work as God in the world, right? You can't put one, you can't do part two, which is oftentimes where we go. We want to do the work in the world, we want to help others when we haven't disappeared in God. And we also aren't seeing the Holy Spirit in all. We're seeing broken people, distressed people, angry people, hurtful people, and that's the reality that we see. We stop at the level of appearance because we stopped at the level of the veil. We haven't gone beyond the veil in ourselves. So true spiritual work in the world is where we've undergone this unveiling first. Okay. And then finally from the mother. O Lord, thou hast given me thy power, that thy peace and joy may reign over the world. Right? And this being is now only an embrace of peace, enveloping the whole earth, an ocean of joy breaking over all things. O you who are full of hatred, rancor, shall be effaced from your hearts as the sea effaces an imprint upon the sands. O you who feed upon vengeance, peace shall pass into your hearts as it enters the soul of a child rocked by its mother. For the divine and universal mother has turned her gaze upon the earth, and she has blessed it. So she's speaking of this transfiguration within herself, that as she has given herself fully into God, God has revealed her mission or her purpose, and it's to be a mother to all. It's to recognize that every living being, if we can play with Shantideva's teaching, not just your mother, but your child, that every living being is your child. And so the tenderness and the kindness and the love and the compassion can be seen in that sense as a way of mothering lost and frightened children. Just take a moment. It's one of the aspects of God as mother that oftentimes is most appealing for us, especially when we first start out on the path. For many, like myself, it was the tenderness of Jesus, the sweet openness of Jesus, the harmlessness of Jesus. But for many, it could be the Divine Mother, Mother Mary, for instance, because God takes the form that is most approachable for the aspirant. And the form of mother, for many, is a comfort, a place to go for safety, for refuge, for nurturing. And so the teachings around the Divine Mother oftentimes show up within the Catholic Church around the Mother Mary as the woman or mother of sorrows. The iconography often shows Mother Mary with a heart that's pierced with many swords. And it's because the mother weeps for her children, the mother cares for her children. And it's this aspect of the mother that for a billion people on this planet that adore and worship Mother Mary oftentimes identify with. And as we're going to see now as we turn to the poem Savitri, this is that journey that Savitri, who is a female protagonist in the story, she's the soul on her journey out of all limitation and into pure divinity. And her first ascent is to experience herself as the mother of sorrows. We're going to go through, as she does in her poem, her ascent, we're going to encounter these archetypes. This is very much Jung's idea, that we go through these archetypes. Sorry, I'm boring you. If I am usually more animated, and this morning you just happen to be in a place where we're going kind of in this really expanded. Okay, gotcha. But this idea of, and I only say it out of kindness to you. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm come back. You'll see. You'll have a good time if you come back. But Mother Mary is this mother of sorrows that Sri Aurobindo uses in this poem, and I think it's just astonishingly beautiful in the way he expresses this journey that Savitri goes through. Again, maybe my inner nerd is coming out, but this is, to me, nectar. So I hope you guys enjoy it. So here from a low and prone and listless ground, the passion of the first ascent began. A moon-bright face and a somber cloud of hair. A woman sat in a pale, lustrous robe. A rugged and ragged soil was her bare seat. Beneath her feet, a sharp and wounding stone. A divine pity on the peaks of the world. A spirit touched by the grief of all that lives. She looked out far and saw from inner mind this questionable world of outward things, of false appearances and plausible shapes. This dubious cosmos stretched in the ignorant void, the pangs of earth, the toil and speed of the stars, and the difficult birth and dolorous end of life, accepting the universe as her body of woe. The mother of the 7 sorrows bore the 7 stabs that pierced her bleeding heart. The beauty of sadness lingered on her face. Her eyes were dim with the ancient stain of tears. Her heart was riven with the world's agony and burdened with the sorrow and struggle and time. And anguished music trailed in her rapt voice, absorbed in a deep compassion's ecstasy, lifting the mild ray of her patient gaze. In soft, sweet training words, slowly she spoke. O Savitri, I am thy secret soul. To share the suffering of the world I came. I draw my children's pangs into my breast. I am the nurse of the dollar beneath the stars. I am the soul of all who wailing writhe under the ruthless harrow of the gods. I am woman, nurse and slave, and beaten beast. I tend the hands that gave me cruel blows, the hearts that spurned my love and zeal, I serve. I am the courted queen, the pampered doll. I am the giver of the bowl of rice. I am the worshipped angel of the house. I am in all that suffer and that cries. Mine is the prayer that climbs in vain from earth. I am traversed by my creature's agonies. I am the spirit in a world of pain. The scream of tortured flesh and tortured hearts, fallen back on heart and flesh, unheard by heaven, has rent with helpless grief and wrath my soul. I have seen the peasant burning in his hut. I have seen the slashed corpse of the slaughtered child, heard woman's cry ravished and stripped and held amid the bayings of the hellhound mob. I have looked on. I had no power to save. So this is the first mother of sorrows. And Savitri says this: Madonna of suffering, mother of grief divine, thou art a portion of my soul put forth to bear the unbearable sorrow of the world. Because thou art, men yield not to their doom, but ask for happiness and strive with fate. Because thou art, the wretched still can hope, but thine is the power to solace, not to save. One day I will return, a bringer of strength, and make thee drink from the Eternal's cup. His streams of force shall triumph in thy limbs, and wisdom's calm control thy passionate heart. Thy love shall be bound, thy love shall be the bond of humankind. The world shall be freed from the anger of the beast, from the cruelty of the Titan and his pain. There shall be peace and joy forevermore. So this is an archetype of the female spirit that has suffered long millennia of the beast, the slave, the rape victim, etc., all in this futility of being unable to do anything about it, right? And we can all feel that collectively. Like this is, in the mystical teachings of Judaism, this is the Shekinah, this is the divine presence that goes into exile to feel the difficulties and the struggles and the horrors of the separation. And so Savitri, remember, is the divine female who is overcoming these collective archetypes of this, in this case, the bonded or bound mother, the mother who struggles and suffers with her children, right? So remember, an archetype is something that we all feel, we all embody in our own particular way. And especially today, as we're dedicating this service to those who embody it as woman, this is something to consider, that it's a stage along the way, much like what Savitri is going through. And now she comes to the Mother of Might, right? The warrior goddess. And it says here, on past she and her spirit's upward route, an ardent grandeur climbed mid ferns and rocks. A quiet wind flattered the heart to warmth. A finer perfume breathed from slender trees. All beautiful grew, subtle and high and strange. Here, on a boulder carved like a huge throne, a woman sat in gold and purple sheen. Armed with the trident and the thunderbolt, her feet upon a couchant lion's back, a formidable smile curved around her lips. Heaven fire laughed in the corner of her eyes. Her body, a mass of courage and heavenly strength, she menaced the triumph of the nether gods. A halo of lightnings flamed around her head. And sovereignty, a great cestus, zoned her robe, and majesty and victory sat with her, guarding the wide cosmic battlefield. Her speech, like a war cry, rang, or a pilgrim chant. A charm restoring hope in failing hearts aspired the harmony of her puissant voice. O Savitri, I am thy secret soul. I have come down into the human world, and the movement watched by an unsleeping eye, and the dark contrariety of earth's fate, and the battle of the bright and somber powers. I stand upon earth's paths of danger and grief, and help the unfortunate and save the doomed. She goes on, we can't cover it due to time. And then Savitri, turning to her, spoke, Madonna of might, mother of works and force, thou art a portion of my soul put forth to help mankind and help the travail of time. Because thou art in him, man hopes and dares. Because thou art, men's souls can climb the heavens and walk like gods in the presence of the Supreme. But without wisdom, power is like a wind. It can breathe upon the heights and kiss the sky. It cannot build the extreme, eternal things. So she'll come back and give wisdom to the goddess's power, right? So she doesn't have wisdom, she just has power. And then finally, we'll just give Savitri's reply to the Mother of Light, okay? So she goes up again, ascends, and she's greeted by this heavenly being, this glorious goddess, who is in the enlightened state. And yet, just like that third robber that we saw in the story, can't go into the absolute. It's still an expression of the soul in nature, even at its sattvic or illumined state. It's not the absolute, so it doesn't have the power to reach down into the depths of life and raise up people. So Savitri even has to go beyond this mother of light in order to integrate everything. So she says, Mother of light, mother of joy and peace, thou art a portion of myself put forth to raise the spirit to its forgotten heights and wake the soul by touches of the heavens. Because thou art, the soul draws near to God. Because thou art, love grows in spite of hate, and knowledge walks unslain in the pit of night. But not by showering heaven's golden rain upon the intellect's hard and rocky soil can the bird of paradise flower on earthly ground, and the bird of paradise sit upon life's boughs, and the winds of paradise visit mortal air. Even if thou rain down intuition's rays, the mind of man will think it earth's own gleam, his spirit by spiritual ego sink, or his soul dream shut in sainthood's brilliant cell. So in other words, even this enlightened truth will be misinterpreted. It will be spiritual ego or self-inflation, or it will be this self-isolation of monkhood and nunnery. It doesn't liberate. It brings a reflection, but not the real deal. Finally here, one day I will return, his hand in mine, and thou shalt see the face of the Absolute. Then shall the holy marriage be achieved. Then shall the divine family be born. There shall be light and peace in all the worlds. Well, you had your dose of Old English this morning, brethren. What thinkest thou? Dost thine have any questions? Any thoughts? Yes. What was the name of? That's Sri Aurobindo. It's all taken from his poem Savitri. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, if you read the whole part of where she's being spoken of, it brings you to tears. It's just remarkable what he was able to put into language. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, blue bag's going to go around. And if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you are invited to contribute to the 8 a.m. service by clicking the link below. We thank you for that. We bless the offering. We charge it with the intention that it do good in the world and bring hearts and minds into union with their true nature. And so it is. Amen.
And also, a real man is not threatened by a woman of equality.
A real man is not threatened by a woman of equality. You're saying that I was? Huh? Huh? You got a problem? I'm going to see you after church, Ray. I'm going to do some serious forgiveness work on you. We good? Any thoughts? No? All right, let's seal the deal. Happy Mother's Day is right. All right, so as we rise and sink within the center of the heart, we just get to a place of inner quiet. And from this inner silence, we know that the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us wherever we go. God is. Amen. Have a beautiful Sunday. Happy Mother's Day again. We'll see you soon.